Okay.
And one more. So they will be coming anyway.
Good.
And I'll just start. So it's my honor today to introduce Rob Howard, who is the owner of Online Language Center and a managing partner of Business Language Training Institute and a joint coordinator in IATEFL BC. And the floor is yours.
Great. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm glad you're here. It's nice to see cameras on. Feel free to leave your camera on. It's nice to see smiling faces. And nice to see everybody here. And I just want to make sure everybody can hear me okay. The things you're never supposed to do in Zoom, right? You don't ask that question. I hope you can understand my English. It's not very good. I'm American. So, you might have a tough time. But feel free to type in the chat room. I'll try and keep an eye on it. But most of the stuff, if we have some questions, we'll cover that. I'll leave time in the end so we can go over some questions. So what I wanted to talk about today, excuse me, and I do not have COVID, I have allergies. And so don't worry, this is 100% virus free today. All right. So as we get started, I'm hoping everybody knows what ESP is. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Purposes. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So we're not reading minds, although as teachers, we often have to. And that's why I think it's interesting that it's ESP. Do any of you teach ESP now? Just give me a quick yes. Yes, or raise your hand, or yeah. All right, everybody's teaching, because I don't know where you're teaching, and we don't have time to ask each and every one of you. Do you think teaching ESP is easy?
Not exactly.
No, not at all. Do you think it should be?
Oh, it depends.
Do you think it could be?
It might be.
Well, it can be. And hopefully what I'll show you today is some things that you can do that are going to help you make it easier working with the ESP students. Now, first thing, the most important part, I think, with ESP is the relative lexis. And this is really where we have the differences between the specific purposes that we're working with. And everybody has got different vocabulary they work with. But come on, they're using the same grammar, they're using the same structures, everything else should be the same. So it's just a matter of understanding the vocabulary and how we put together the phrasing that they use. Now, I'll let you read this. We have to keep in mind the difference in linguistics, and the collocations can be different working with ESP. Now, here's a little thing for Merriam-Webster. And I always use American dictionaries. They're my favorite. Now, don't get scared away. Let me see. Nobody leave. I know this is a very nasty word. And, when people say ESP, they think of English for specific purposes. But really, what are the purposes that we're really talking about? Is going to Disneyland for vacation English for specific purpose?
No, not really.
Not really. Is it watching movies on Netflix ESP?
No, that's general English.
It's general English. And the thing is that every time we say business English, I know, because we're the BSIG, it scares people. Because they think, oh my goodness, business English, I don't know anything about business. So we're going to call it career English. Okay?
Yeah.
No more business English. Better yet, we'll call it workplace English. How's that? Does that seem less
sounds very
scary?
good. Yeah.
All right, nobody's running away. Good. I still see the same amount of people in the room. Nice. Primarily, when we're talking about ESP, we're talking about English for the workplace. And yes, I see some of the stuff coming up here. Great. Maritime English, aviation English. I deal a lot with IT. Most of my students now are IT. Yeah, I know one of the Oxanas that are here. I know she's teaching a lot of IT people. That's her specialty. So IT is very big right now. And the thing that we need to do when we're teaching ESP, of course, is we need to look at their needs. And this is the most important thing that we have to do. And this comes with the need analysis. I won't tell you how to do it. That's a whole nother talk. But what we need to do is analyze the subject that they're studying for and see how English is used within that field, because this can be different from field to field. Okay. And we need to do an in-depth analysis, but with the student in order to understand that field better. And I find if you do this with your student in the beginning, you'll get a much better handle on what the student needs and what's important in the field. And it gives you a place to go to learn a little bit more about what they're doing. Excuse me while I keep coughing. So you're going to use the analysis that you do with the student to build a course that's going to meet your students' needs. Now, everybody's reality is different. I'm lucky because I'm teaching one-to-one. So it's very easy for me to come up with something designed specifically for one student. Now, I know university students, if you're a university professor, you're dealing with a large group of different university majors, and you're going to have to figure out a way to do a mix there. If you're working in company and you have large classrooms that may not have the same position, you may have somebody from finance, someone from HR, you're going to have to learn a lot more, a lot quicker, and build the course specifically for their needs. But you also need to adapt your activities so they're also relevant for the student within that field. Now, I love task-based learning for course, project-based learning. I really like to get them into doing something that's relevant to their job. And this is the best way for, I feel, to practice. And we'll talk about how I do practice. And an important thing that I think we never do enough, and I noticed with a lot of business English teachers that I watch some of their sample classes, for some reason, we don't do evaluations at the end. And I think this is even more important in the business atmosphere, because you really need to get some honest feedback from your student to see if you're doing it right and you're providing what they need. So content is the key. And what are we going to do? What will we do to come up with content? Well, let's look at this thinking that it's going to be for the workplace. And this is why we're teaching ESP. Let's look at some of the different things we can do, because I'm sure that no matter what your student is dealing with, he's got to deal with 2 or 3 of these different things. You know, whether he's doing negotiation or not, whether he's doing customer service, whether he's a logistics person, and you know what? They all need to make small talk. And this is where a lot of them have a lot of problem, which is something else we can work on. So you're going to be able to find a few things that you can do and bring right into the classroom for activities. Now, what we're talking about is domain specific skills, you know, whether they be a mathematician, whether they be a scientist, whether they be academics, it's specific skills that they need for their domain. For example, I work with a biotech company in St. Petersburg, but I work with the statisticians within a biotech company. So I'm dealing not only with mathematics, which fortunately for me, I know how to add and subtract. I have problems with division, but science, I'm lost. So fortunately, we don't have to talk a lot about the biotech end of it because I don't understand science. Now, we're dealing with definitely the higher order thinking skills of our students, and we need to bring this into the classroom. They're used to the lower skills, and I like to really work on, we're going to talk about this word, but fluency activities. Every activity that I like to work on, I want them talking, I want them activated, I want them engaged, and I want this back and forth going because, as you'll see, I'm very big on practicing over and over and over again. And I think we've gotten rid of this years ago when we said, okay, in the communicative style, we don't do drilling. And we've missed out because we don't do it. So again, looking at the students' needs and the students' objectives and making sure that we have a clear picture. Now, what I'm finding is the majority of my students, they come to me, they're C1, C2 level. They're usually in their mid to late 20s, all the way up to usually early 40s. And they're the students that we failed with years ago. And what I mean by that is when we tried to teach them English a long time ago, they didn't get it, or they hated it, or they stopped using it. So they're returning and trying to use English again. So they're bringing a lot of luggage with them. And there's a lot of problems. Why didn't they like it the first time? Why didn't they learn it the first time? What are the mistakes that are fossilized in their speech? You know, I'm dealing with Russians, for example. Here's a good example. Now, the average Russian I'm teaching is about 30 years old, 28, 29, 30 years old. They studied English for 10, 12 years in school. They reached a relatively good level. And you know what? They have great vocabulary. They can talk. They can carry on an interesting conversation, but none of them know how to use an article. Now, how can you be at C1, C2 level in some things and not know to use an article? It means that they've either forgotten or we failed them years ago, that this didn't set in. And I spend more time teaching articles. And what happens is, think about it with yourself. I know because I'm here in Poland and I say I'm trying to learn the language. I'm not. It's hard. And I've learned enough languages in my life. I don't need this now. But it's frustrating. We all know how frustrating it can be to try and recall a language that we might have worked with years ago. For example, I used to speak French 100 years ago. I studied it as a kid. I had 6 years of French, and my first wife was French. My mother-in-law was French, and I taught my son French. I can't remember anything today. So it's very frustrating. For me, it's frustrating for them. Now, I like to work with reality because the reality is my students are coming to me, their vocabulary is good. You know, they're reading articles, they know the things that they're working with in IT, for example. I'll use IT as an example. Their listening is usually good. Most of them don't have problems listening because they are watching movies, they're watching YouTube, they're listening to music. Most of them, no problem reading. They have good intelligence level and they understand. But when it comes to speaking and then writing in grammar, here's where they fall. And really, when you think about it, today's workplace student, notice not business English, today's workplace speaker needs speaking and writing abilities more than anything else. So this is what I concentrate on with them. And the first thing is vocabulary. Now, first thing that I usually do with vocabulary, it's relatively easy to learn. Vocabulary should be simple at this point because they're looking at specific words in IT, in science, in medicine. Most of the words are the same in your language that you're using as they are in English. You're using the English equivalent. I don't know the Ukrainian word for computer, but in in Portuguese, it's computador. I think I can figure out the difference and figure what it is. So vocabulary should be relatively easy to learn, but the question is where? Course books. Now, are you using course books in your ESP teaching? I saw a couple of heads shaking. I expect some yeses, partially. I expect some no's too. Because here's one of the problems with course books. It's very difficult to get a course book specifically designed for any one student anymore. I know that some of the series have come up with books. For example, you have Market Leader, has one for IT, has one for HR, has one for, every different thing. But one thing you have to keep in mind, it takes 2 to 3 years to get a course book to the market. By the time the course book has hit the market, it's obsolete. When we're talking about workplace English, they can't get course books out fast enough. So I really don't feel the course book is your best tool for learning vocabulary. It could help you a lot with grammar, but vocabulary, no. And remember, most of them already know most of the vocabulary. We just need to help them fill in some of the gaps. So fill in the gaps. One thing that I have no problem with is working with translation, because the reality is for most adults working in workplace English is they're going to come across a time where they're going to have to sit in a room and translate between two different people and do this code switching back and forth between their own language and English. So I actually like to work with it to get them accustomed to this. And what I have them do is I get them to sit down right in the beginning and get a notebook. Think about the things that they say in whatever their language is. In your case, it'd be Ukrainian. What are the words that they're using in Ukrainian all the time? And make sure that they know these in English. That's the place to start. Because, for example, I'll give you an example with graphs. When people are dealing with graphs and reading a graph, they usually say it went up, it went down. That's it. That's the only adjectives that are used. Up, down. I say, now what would you say in Ukrainian? Oh, it plummeted, it soared, it shot up. And these are the words that they should write down if they're not using them in English. So get them to write down the words that they're commonly using. So we're not teaching them words that they don't normally use. Get the language that they work with. And we'll talk more about Realia afterwards. But trade magazines, everybody's got a trade magazine, and they should be reading these, you know, for their job. And I actually get them, if they can, to send me articles so I can get up to date and get some of the latest trends that are going on. I also do a lot of work on Google all the time, trying to stay up to date. Now, the nice thing about IT is I did study computer science 100 years ago, so I don't know the same languages they're working with, but I do understand IT and I do understand programming and coding. Just like people know modern Greek, I know ancient Greek, but it's still Greek. So I get my students listening to podcasts because invariably they're spending a lot of time either commuting, sitting around, doing nothing, maybe working out at the gym. And what better time to listen to a podcast? Because there's a million podcasts about everything you could possibly want out there today. Now, there's two things that you can do with podcasts. Number one, they'll find new vocabulary. They'll find how the vocabulary is used in a sentence. And another thing that's good, it's actually great for listening to different accents. I also use it for accent training and make it easy to listen to. For example, if you listen to an IT expert from China, after a little while, you start tuning your ear. So when you have to deal with an IT client from China, it should be a little bit easier. YouTube, same thing. If you're sitting at home, there's a ton of YouTube videos that you can use, and you'll get more vocabulary and you'll get more training. I also recommend this not only for yourself, but for my students. For example, all right, I have 3 Oksanas on the screen right now. So all 3 Oksanas, I'll pick on you. Now, you're learning English, let's say. You know education. You've all studied education. So you know all the words. You're learning English. Why don't you take a course on Coursera or Udemy for free on Teaching English 101? Because here's why. You understand everything they're saying, but now you're hearing everything you learned in English. And you hear how the words, the phrases, and everything go together. And I do this, I started this years ago with accountants in Brazil, and it really worked well because they said, you know, you're right. I know how to do accounting. It's not killing me to take accounting 101, but I'm hearing all the terminology used and I know what they're saying now. So it's great to build up their confidence also. And sometimes it's good for you as the teacher to learn a little bit about what they're learning and what they're dealing with. For instance, if I was sent into a company who does automobiles, you know, I might want to take a course in basic auto mechanics or something like that, just so I know what they were dealing with. So I know the terminology. And remember, these things are usually free. So take advantage. My best friend, the thesaurus. I am really amazed at how many students don't know what a thesaurus is. They think it was something that used to roam the earth years ago and is now extinct. I grew up with the thesaurus. I have, in the old days, I had a thesaurus in front of my dictionary on my desk. Now it's one of my first clicks in my browser because I constantly use a thesaurus. And this is the way that they're going to build up their vocabulary, talking about things other than just specific words for the job. Now, I'm a big fan of word banks for learning. Are you familiar with word banks at all? Have you seen any of these? These are the type of things that they have words. You subscribe to it for free, and they usually send you a few words every day. It depends how you set it up. And it'll test you on the words with new vocabulary, and it brings your level up each time. Now, the better ones, you can actually add your own words to this, and it deals with the idea of spaced repetition. So it's going to bring you the word today, and then bring that word back in about a week, and then in a couple of weeks after that. And students who work with this, I find, especially with my IT students, have really done a great job on increasing their vocabulary. The best one I can recommend, yeah, I really, thank you, Irina. It's they're great for students to use while learning. But one of the best ones out there that I've seen was Super Memo, but you have to pay a little bit for it. I think it's about $30, but there are free ones out there. And I recommend you get your students working with these to help increase their vocabulary. As I said before, I have everybody come up with a learner's notebook. And this is so they're writing down words, they're writing down phrases. I even tell people I prefer them to write it down. It's, if you've ever seen me talk before, I talk a lot about haptics and how it's important to write things down. When people type them into the computer, they tend to forget them a lot faster. If you write it, they've actually proved it now with multiple universities have done testing on this, 20% better retention if you write things down. So I have them write this down in a learner's notebook. And what I also do is I have them even look at their emails, look at letters, look at articles. When they see a good sentence that makes sense, steal it, copy it down and write it, because there's a chance that someday in one of your emails, you'll be able to use that sentence. And if nothing else, practice speaking it. So take advantage of other people's good stuff. And of course, relevant Lexis. So they'll be working with everything. Now, what I like to do and what I find is the ones that have good vocabulary, they just don't have much in the way of complex grammar. Everything is present tense, maybe some past tense. You never hear the perfect tenses. You never hear conditionals. You never hear compound sentences. And I'm working with them now to build more complex structures. And this started with a Belarusian company that we're actually redoing all of their website and all of their materials. And we're making them sound more salesy for the marketplace. So we're working with compound sentences, complex, teaching the difference between semicolon, colon, mixing tenses, conditionals, the em dash, and clauses. Here's an example. I asked students to tell me, write down things that they say very often. Okay, here's one that came in. Our team can streamline your workflows. Good. This increases benefits, return on assets, resources. This can deliver better revenues and savings. Good. Good basic sentences. Can we do better? And working with it, after working a little while and talking a lot about complex grammar, here's how they rewrote it. I'll let you read it yourself while I cough. So all the information that was in 3 sentences now put by using more advanced grammar into one good sellable sentence, which this happens to be on the website. So a much better flow. And here's another one. Okay, they're good sentences to begin with. You can see that they have complex control over vocabulary, but they don't have it over building a sentence until we work with it and see how they can take all that information and build a much more complex sentence. Now, I'm not teaching them grammar because I don't have to, because they've already been taught grammar years ago. And I don't have to say, okay, this is the grammar rule. I say, how do we make the information flow together? So now I'm not scaring my student by saying, okay, here's a grammar rule. And it's funny because once in a while, people will say, well, is that the first or the second conditional? I say, look, I'm old. I'm about 150 years old. I've been walking this earth forever, and nobody has ever walked up with me with a t-shirt that says, only talk to me in the second conditional. I said, forget about the numbers, forget about the rules. Make what makes sense to you in building a sentence, and build it, use a clause. And here's another one. Ensures integrity, enforces compliance and operating, making the flow of work smoother. There. It's a wonderful sentence. This is how your students can improve, and it's going to help improve their writing skills. And it's also going to help them improve the thought process. So they're going to start thinking more before they speak. And it's not going to be just short chunks and sentences. Okay, here's after. So you get the idea. Remember, I talk about IT people the most. When you're dealing with IT people, these people learn coding. And coding is actually pretty easy. I don't know if any of you are learning coding at all. You can learn the syntax of coding in a week. You can learn the basics of coding in a month. You can have mastery in coding in a year. What about language? Takes a little bit longer. But if we try and work and make this for coding for them, something comfortable and getting with them working with it, the time will fly. So speaking, when I'm working with speaking, I'm mainly focused on the meaning of what they're saying, the context, and communication. So I'm working on fluency. I'm just curious, I should have asked it first. Which is more important? Just put F for fluency or A for accuracy in the chat room quickly. Which do you think is more important, fluency or accuracy? I like the F. Or the fa. Okay. Yeah. Okay, good. There we go. There's my favorite answer. G. Both. And yes, it depends. So for speaking, most of the time I'm working on fluency. But when it comes to writing, now remember, these are business people. Workplace English people. They're not business. So when I'm working on that, there I focus a little bit more on grammar because, it's in writing. And I worry more, instead of context, I worry about the content and correctness. So here I'm worried about accuracy. And it does make a difference. A lot of people, I know Scott will be talking after me. He's like, forget accuracy, worry about fluency. Yeah, tell that to somebody who's negotiating a $20 million deal that accuracy in numbers doesn't matter. Tell me when you're talking to a doctor and he says, I'm going to cut off 3 of your limbs. Tell me that accuracy is not important. And if you're talking to a lawyer who's trying to get you to not go to jail, I want somebody who's accurate, not necessarily fluent. So yes, it matters, and it depends on the situation. And we have to work with both. Remember, I'm not talking just general English like we were teaching years ago in the course. There, fluency is great. I agree with it there. We're talking about workplace people. So we need to find the balance between fluency and accuracy. And one of the ways we can help them with that is by having meaningful conversations and getting them to write. Now, I get my students to write between 250 and 500 words a week when they're bad. I usually do this maybe for about a month, and then I lay off, and then maybe once a month I have them do one serious writing. And I have them talk about something that they did at work, something that they're dealing with, something that's relative to them. Sometimes it'll be like, report to the boss exactly what it was that happened with this last client. And this gives me a way of fixing things. And there's a few different writing tricks. Here's one that you can work with, which I think will help you. I have somebody take a situation, and you can do this in writing, you can do it in speaking. Let's say I want to take a vacation with my drinking buddies. So I have to talk to my boss and tell him how important it is that I have time off to rejuvenate my brain and get blah, blah, blah going. The other conversation is I pretend you're talking to your mother. Because when you talk to your mother, you talk a different way. And the third way is you talk to your best friend. So first of all, what I'm doing is I'm helping them realize the difference between registers in voicing, that of course I'm going to be more polite, I'm going to be more formalized when I'm talking to the boss. If it's my mother, you know, I would probably have to talk down a little bit of level, and nothing too sophisticated and nothing too job specific. And if I'm talking to my best friend, it's going to be, dude, we're going drinking, party, man. But let them feel the difference between the genres, between the registers and the voicing. You can use it. It works. So I like to work with their objectives. So what should we teach? I try, number one, to teach them confidence, because what you'll find is the majority of these people are coming to you, they are rusty, and they have a total lack of confidence that they're doing a good job speaking. So half the time we're acting as therapists or coach or whatever, and getting them to realize they can speak. They just have to try. So the first thing I build is confidence. I do a lot of this by modeling. No, not like this, but you know, every time that I have them do something, I give them an example so they get a good idea of exactly what it is that I am looking for the production to be. And we constantly find new ways of new intake for new vocabulary. And we reflect on the different things that we've come up with and that we've worked with. And like it says on the shampoo bottle, wash, rinse, and repeat. You do it all over again because they need the practice. They will feel much more confident if they work with you, make their mistakes with you, and get rid of the mistakes there. So make sure you do this, because the idea is to build lifelong learners. And quite frankly, we're forever learning. I'm still learning the English language. There's new words all the time, and we want to build them into this. So a little bit about how to practice. This is my favorite. And you're not going to find this in Scott Thornberry's 100 Ways to Teach English or 7 Favorite Activities. Well, maybe you will someday. I talked about the thesaurus. I talked about reading. Quite frankly, and not to be disgusting, how much time do we waste? I know most people are usually sitting there with their cell phone these days, reading stuff, playing games. When I was a kid, I had a dictionary in the bathroom with me, and I used to study words from the dictionary when I was in the bathroom, believe it or not. And my mother would say, "What are you doing in there?" I'm learning words, Mom. When I was done with the dictionary, I started with the thesaurus. And think about it, with the amount of time that you spend, I actually did the math. If you spend 5 minutes a day on the toilet, that's an extra 30 hours a year of studying. If you spend 10 minutes a day, that's an extra 60 hours. If you spend 15 minutes a day, that's an extra 90 hours a year of studying vocabulary in English. If you're spending more than 15 minutes, you probably should see a doctor, because I think there's something wrong with you. But think about it. It's taking the wasted time and taking advantage of it. So we try to reach mastery. If I'm sure there's only a couple of people here who know me, I happen to be a musician, and I was a professional musician for years. When I was a kid, I used to practice a minimum of 3 hours a day. If you expect to reach mastery, which a lot of these people expect that they're going to do with English, they need to spend time. And I love it when I get a student who comes to me and say, "Can I have like maybe 2 classes a month? You think I'll get better?" No. Try that with the gym. Go to the gym twice a month and see how in shape you get. You got to dedicate and put the work in. And, just 3 hours a day. That's 46 days. And I like to call it filling, drilling, and grilling. Fill them up with words. Drill the words over and over again. And then when they're comfortable with it, start grilling them like a policeman. Argue with them, fight with them, push them, and make sure that they can use these words and expressions to get back and to answer your questions and to argue with you. They will love you for it. Here's another thing that I've been doing lately, because I've been working with a lot of project managers and customer service people and salespeople. I call this minus, equals, and plus. Have them make a little graph, a little chart like this. And we're going to go for a weak word, a strong word, and then a neutral word. Now, for example, I consider, because my background is business, I came from sales before I became a teacher. If is a weak word. Imagine, if you buy my product, you'll be happy. Kind of weak. Let's replace if with a strong word. When you buy my product, you will see what a good choice you made. And then while we're working on it, let's come up with something neutral. Like in the event. Usually these will be phrases. Give you a few more examples. Can is a weak word. Will, much stronger. Most likely, neutral. Think, know, certain of. Now, there's times if I'm talking to somebody and I'm talking to them about their project, well, if we can get your project done on time, maybe we can get it to you by the deadline. I think so. That doesn't give a lot of confidence to the client, does it? So thinking about these strong words, when we finish the project, we will get it to you, and I know you'll be happy. That gives confidence. If we have to tone it down a little bit, they have the neutral word. But these words don't come quickly to them. They're not native speakers. They're not speakers like we are as teachers that know these words and they come right to our head. They need practice drilling with these. Now, there are times when instead of a strong word, they want to use a weak word. Like when it comes to the word guarantee. Well, if we can guarantee, we can get it to you. So it's helping them out, building these words that they need to use, and depending on the circumstances, dealing with the client, they can deal much faster, much better. So basically, what I think our job is, we're multitasking, active listening, giving them feedback, we're grading their language, we're customizing a course for them, we're generating interest. We want to keep the conversation going all the time. And we're adapting to various industries and positions. A true ESP career English teacher, workplace English teacher has to know a lot of things about a lot of things. So it makes us pretty damn smart. So our job, most of all, motivate them, get them talking, but make sure they realize they have to do the work. So we can make it easy. And you'll be so proud of me, Oksana, huh? If you're doing ESP, I'll give you one of the greatest things. You guys got to join the IATEFL BSIG, because we have more workplace English, career English, business English, resources, workshops, everything else. We are a great source of information. Take a look at our website, become a member. Most of you, I'm sure, are already IATEFL Ukraine members, so I guess that makes you an affiliate. Look into what it is to become part of us. And we invite you to all join us in the break room. We do this twice a month, and it's free for members and non-members. Come in and join us and see what we're all about, because we'll give you some of the best resources you need for ESP teaching for the workplace. So that's about all I have to say. Any questions, comments, if you want to reach me. This is my landing site, is robhoward.me, and it takes you to every different thing that I do. So I would be happy to hear from you. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see all your smiley faces. And please, questions, comments? Anyone? Thank you. Are you guys really? You're not going to talk? Wow.
Can we talk and ask a question?
Yes. Talk and ask questions, please.
Hi, my name is Violeta, and I have this idea that the simpler the phrases are, like, for example, for websites and stuff, the higher sales are. So I was doing just the opposite. I was teaching them to use simple structures because we don't know who are our customers, and not necessarily they have, a master degree or PhD. So
Right.
they need to see, like, in 3 phrases, they need to see exactly what they're going to get for their money. But whereas in this seminar, you mentioned in different things, so I'm just not as familiar with this area. So can you please comment on that? Thank you.
Yep, good. It's a very good question. And it's one of those, it depends. You have to worry about who is the customer who's reading the website. Now, when I'm dealing with the IT companies that I'm dealing with, they're dealing with clients in Canada, the US, UK, Australia, New Zealand. So they're dealing primarily with native speakers. And I say primarily, not all the time. So the more sophisticated language is kind of needed to impress the customer, because there's a million places out there who do IT, and there's a million programmers. So in this case, the particular company I work with in Minsk, they found that their materials were horrible because they were basic and nobody was taking them seriously. Now, by upping it and giving them more sophisticated language, they are finding that they're drawing more customers. But I could see where there might be a time where, bringing down to basic language would help. Maybe you need both. Maybe you have to work with both. I don't know if that will help, but as everything in life, it depends. Let's see. Can you give a prompt where we can find the authentic materials in various areas to use them as the teaching? Ask your student. Your students know where they can find authentic materials. Have them bring authentic materials. Have them bring emails. Have them bring anything that's going on in the company. If you have to, tell them you'll sign a non-disclosure. But, work with the stuff that they're working with every day. That you can't get more authentic than their own working materials and emails, their own interdepartmental information. I know with the IT companies, this is more difficult because nobody writes anything anymore. They have stand-up meetings and you don't see a lot in writing. But, you can, Google is great. You can find everything online these days. You just got to be creative with Google. I can find anything. Let's see. Is it necessary to skill to develop in our students how to grade their language to various customers? Irina, I'm not sure what you mean. How to grade their language? What do you mean?
Rob, if you let me comment. When you said that we need, there are various options, like that we may teach them pretty sophisticated language, which is targeted for some native speakers, customers from like those countries that you mentioned, but at the same time, they have to deal with countries where the language is taught the same way that we do. So, as soon as they reach a bit higher level, so they need to be able to reduce it, to grade it to those who are not native speakers, because the major aim is to be understood, but not to impress with their competence, language competence, and so on. I guess it's also a skill that they need to be taught or trained.
Well, let me ask you this, Irina. I'm going to use you as an example. I understood everything you said. I don't know if my 4-year-old, which I don't have, understood everything that you just said. What would you do?
I'll try to use some simple words or some graphics to explain him.
And how do you know that you have to do that between him and me?
I'm not sure that I get. What do you mean between you and? So first of all, I'll need to have a contact, at least first contact with your nephew, for instance, and to know his level. So and then I'll try to adjust my level to his one, right?
Exactly. So you know how to do that. I don't think that we should be teaching them how to speak basically low level. They already know how to do that. And I think that most people are smart enough to realize when they need to grade down. For instance, you have to grade down for the 4-year-old and grade, or maybe grade down for me, who knows? So we know when to make this adjustment instinctively in our own language. I think we'll easily do that in English, but I want to give them not only the low level, I want to give them the high level. And now they have more room to play with, and it covers more bases. I don't have to teach anybody gonna, wanna, shoulda. They all come to class knowing that. I'm going to teach them the right way to say it. I am going to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, just that's exactly true. So of course we need to strive to bring them to the best, to the perfect language, for instance, but nevertheless explain that in case they face with the situation when they are not understood with some sophisticated idiomatic expressions, they don't need to overuse them. So probably sometimes it's better to simplify the language in order to be understood. Because I personally, I have to explain this to my students. And you know that I work in IT company, so I have to explain this to quite working audience.
Yep. Well, it's, I don't think anybody should be using idiomatic language. This really it's really a problem. And, if you join the BSIG, you'll see my 60 sports things that I'm writing for next article. But anyway, it's, don't necessarily teach them the idioms and using them. But I mean, we need to be able to make the slide. That's a communication skill. We need a lot more. There's things I didn't even talk about: reflexive questioning, asking the proper questions, making sure that the people understand what we're saying. These are all communication skills. We could go on and on and on, but you know me, I talk forever, but I just had an hour.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Irene. And let's see. I'll be honest with you. It's for the past year and a half, I've been working with university students with this stuff. I was working with them in China for a little while until they shut down Zoom. So the program stopped. I'm not an expert working with university students. For me, my reality is working with real people that are actually working. So I'm not the best expert yet, but I will be in the future. So, I know you have a different reality working in university. What I can tell you is work on the voicing, work on when to use more complex grammar, when to speak down. Have them role play with each other. Most people know what they want to be. Like, one's going to be a programmer, another one's going to be an HR person. All right, have them practice as those roles. Okay, how do you think, to what extent is ideas, words, etc., into saying communication, exchange, and ideas, especially. Interesting question. Engineering students are tough. I work with engineering students here, and there's a lot of information. They tend to be more visual learners than anything else. So I try and give them things in chunks because they seem to be able to get the concept of chunks. And I find this, you might find this with your coders too, that everything is a bunch of short phrases. Everything is a chunk. And then it's a matter of getting them to be comfortable with each one of those chunks and then putting them in together and make something longer. I don't know, visualization. I have them visualize themselves talking. I have them visualize themselves communicating. I also play around with some of the mindfulness stuff, and I have them close their eyes and imagine that they're actually having a talk with a client and practices. So I think it's important that they get over these stumbling blocks, thinking that they can't do things. And visualization helps a lot for that. So that's a good question. Thanks, Irina. More comments.
Yeah. Okay, hello, Rob. Yes,
Hi.
I can ask you a question. Hi. Yeah. Thanks a lot, first of all, for your presentation and, elaboration on this difficult subject, I think, because ESP, workplace English anyway, yeah. So it's a separate thing. So thank you. I wanted to ask more in depth about how you structure the lesson. Yeah. So for example, you learn the context of your customer. Yes, like especially. So how do you actually structure the lessons for vocabulary input, grammar, or speaking? So
I don't say the word grammar. I don't say the word vocabulary. I don't say any of it. I'm actually a horrible teacher because I don't do any of that stuff.
Okay.
I basically say, what's new and exciting? Did you have shashlik over the weekend? And tell them how jealous I am. And then we just start talking and say, what happened this week? And then usually they'll start to tell me a story about a situation that they had at work. And we say, all right, so how did you handle that? What was different? And I have one student I'm working with right now in Belarus. I used to teach the CEO of the company, and he sent me this student, and he said, look, this is one of my top program managers, but everybody's complaining he's rude. And so we've been working on this, on how to be nicer. He thought that he had to, look like the typical German straight face and we will do this and everything. And really he was pushing customers away. The guy smiles now. And the CEO of the company sent me a message the other day through 3 different people saying, I can't believe you did it with him. I was going to have to fire him. And this guy is great, but he brings me his situations. We talk about it. What did you do? What did you say? What was their reaction? What did they say? And, all this language and structure comes out. And of course, if he makes a mistake, I correct his mistake. And then we talk about it and we role play with it. That's my favorite thing to do with these people, is to role play. And, I'll play the angry customer, and, it's like trying to make me feel better. And if he turns to me and says, well, if we do this, I said, I'm calling my lawyer. So role play with them, play around with it, ask them what they need. I'll tell you though, it's not always business, because for example, I have another one who's a program manager for one of the biggest game companies in Minsk. And we always talk about business stuff. One day we started talking about his dog. It was probably the best class we ever had. So you just never know what is going to happen. And because I'm lazy and I don't like to plan classes, I don't have to. I just wait and see what happened. Something always happened and comes up.
Okay, but do you provide any vocabulary input, for example, if they lack some words or expressions? Do you do that on the go?
Usually I do on the go with expressions. Like if I see they're trying to struggle with something, for example, what did we have? I just had one. Let me think of something. A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, or something like that. Do you have that kind of expression in Ukrainian? Something similar?
Once more?
Or how about don't
Yeah.
put the cart before the horse?
Oh, yes, we do. Ну,
Yeah.
не ставити воза поперед коня. Ага, yeah, we do, of course.
Yeah. So,
we-
you know, thinking about stuff like that, and we talk about some of the expressions. So he's, you know, what did I get one the other day? There was a Russian one, something about the snake eating its tail, and I don't know what that means, but you know, I said, so here's what that would be in English. And so now he knows when that pops into his head, this would be a great time to say about the snake. Now he knows the one to use in English. So yeah, I'll give him as much as we can come up with and figure out.
All right, good. So these are more like conversation classes. Oh, Steve.
Yeah, I feel for me it's the best way. And like I say, I'm lazy. I don't have to prepare anything.
Okay, right. Yeah. I see your context. You know, it's just that very often, I mean, in our companies that we have to work in, people do not come with C1, C2 level. You know,
Sure.
well, sometimes, yeah, but not not all the time. And they have like B1, maybe B2 level. You know, so they finish school with this level. Hopefully, yeah, thanks God, and they work with it. And so they need more in terms of language learning, you know.
Sure.
They need more vocabulary, much more vocabulary. Grammar, you know, brushing up on their grammar, definitely, plus speaking and all of these skills development. So you know, could you recommend, you know, something in that direction, in that way?
Again, work with Realia, have them bring stuff that they can bring in. I'm not saying course books are bad. Course books are an important tool, and there are things that you can use from the course book. But I would work out situations. If you're working with a group, for example, I worked with a group years ago in Brazil for it. Basically, it's kind of like the union of the bus companies. And here I was stuck with a class with a B1 to C2s, 6 people. One was a lawyer, one was logistics, one's an engineer, one this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I built scenarios of, okay, I'm a disgruntled customer. I'm complaining the bus didn't stop for me today. And then I wrote an email to customer service. And then customer service had to hand that over to legal, to logistics, to this and that. Get them to work within the group and work with each other, because now they're learning words from each other. They're learning different vocabulary and content from each other. And once they're comfortable with it, have them switch positions.
Okay, so it's like TBL, yeah, like
Yeah. Okay. Projects are the best. Oh, good luck.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. What else? Role play. Yeah, role play is great. I think role play is really good, and it gives you an opportunity, you said it here, to do modeling. And I do this a lot. The nice thing is, with my background in sales, you know, I know how to do this negotiation with a customer and with a client, and I'm comfortable with it. So I show them how I would do it. And then they figure out how they could make that fit and work for them. So it's all about being comfortable with themselves. But if nothing else, get them to start talking. That's the key.
So Rob, can I interfere a little?
Time to shut me up,
so
right?
Much. It's so hot, like great discussions. And dear colleagues, in 5 minutes, we have one more session. So it's probably high time to let Rob go, though I don't want him to go. I really enjoy it.
Who wants to listen to Scott Thornberry? You know, who's he?
Thank you so much. Great.
Thank everybody so much. It was a pleasure, and join BSIG.
Yeah. Looking forward to meeting you here in Ukraine. Yeah.
I'll be there as soon as we can travel.
Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.